Okay, it's 9:30, and why don't we go ahead and get started? Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Group Corner. This is our third rendition of this webinar series, which we hold every other Wednesday. Today's special guest is Dan Feiwell of Anthem Specialty. I'm your host, Gregg Amato, and you can find my contact information here. I'm the Director of Employee Benefits for Northeast Ohio. And if you need any additional information or located in another part of the state, please contact your local Cornerstone representative. If you would like to be licensed with Anthem or any of our other partner carriers, please talk to a Cornerstone representative and we can help you out. We have a few housekeeping items here to cover. First, if you have a question during the presentation, please feel free to type in the chat box, which is located on the right side of your screen. We'll answer questions following the presentation as time permits. And secondly, one lucky attendee will win a $25 gift card from Dan at Anthem. Caribbean Cruise is up on the agenda for this year for Cornerstone's Rewards trip. It's back for 2020 through the Royal Caribbean Harmony of the Sea Cruise. The dates are from May 3rd to 10th in 2020. The qualifying dates started January of this year and run through 12/31 of this year. Points are earned for writing new business both in the individual medical and ancillary and the group medical and ancillary. So please visit our website so that you can register. We'd like to begin to track your progress. Cornerstone's Resource Center is found on our website, and it is generously filled with information, guides, tutorials, and other educational materials. All this information is categorized by lines of business and is available 24/7. For 2019, we have an enhanced lineup of webinars all across the board. There's the Individual Corner, Build Your Brand, Tech Tuesday, Cornerstone Corner, and of course, today's presentation is part of the Group Corner series. Please take time to register for these upcoming sessions. I'm sure that you'll find them very, very, very informative. And now I'd like to introduce Dan Feiwell of Anthem Specialty. I've known Dan for more than a couple years, I guess, and he's the consummate professional. He's going to give us an in-depth look at Anthem products, how to effectively sell and enroll paid coverages while maximizing your income, and also selling voluntary dental and vision. Dan?
Greg, thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction. And we're going to start off today with some very good news in that I do not believe we're going to use the entire 45 minutes. So what we are going to do is we are going to go through a process of talking about the best ways to sell ancillary benefits. And just to give you a little idea, my background right now, I'm a specialty sales executive with Anthem, which means I'm responsible in the Northern Ohio area for selling dental, vision, life, short-term disability, and long-term disability. And that is my background for about 30 years. And part of where I'm coming from today in this presentation is based on those years of experience and doing things at times the wrong way. I mean, I've learned more by doing things the wrong way than I have doing them the right way. And I don't know if we're joined yet by Stephanie Ellis, who is our specialty sales exec in the southern half of the state. And she does the exact same thing I do, but she works with all the brokers down in Columbus. I work with some in Columbus, but Stephanie works with a lot in Columbus, Dayton, Cincinnati, and down in the southern part of the state. Stephanie's been with Anthem for about 5 years, so she has me there. On the Anthem experiences, I've only been around for about a year. And but hopefully I'm going to share some data with you today, some processes that'll help in your endeavors to doing a better job writing ancillary and voluntary paid benefits and not make some of the mistakes that I've made in the past. So what are the major differences between selling medical and selling ancillary? First of all, medical is of primary importance to you. It's of primary importance to the client. It's of primary importance to the employees. That is the most needed benefit. That is the most sought after benefit. And that is the meat compared to our potatoes. Medical is a driver of service, interest from the employees, and let's be honest, it is the driver of major commissions. That, in most agencies, makes up about 75 to 80% of the annual revenue for most agencies. It's somewhere in that range usually. If it's lower than that, it's because producers are doing a better job selling ancillary and voluntary benefits, and they have more of that in place. As I said, it's also the most used benefit, and it's the reason why you have all your clients. 99% of the time you go out and get a client, you're discussing the group medical, what you can do better, how you can do better, the other options, plans, etc. That is really the basis for what you do. And let's be honest, it's also a huge line item expense for your clients. It could be, benefits could be 20% of their overall budget. So medical is the big line item expense, and that's why there's the most concern there. With all that said, there's a built-in need for medical insurance. They know they need it. The employees want it. They have to have it to remain competitive, and it is just always there. Whereas with the ancillary, that's not the case. Although some can argue that disability, especially long-term, is almost just as important as medical. 49% of all foreclosures are due to people who are on disability and cannot pay the mortgage. But almost all ancillary benefits, besides the dental and vision, are bought not to be used. That is the big difference. People are buying medical. They know they're going to use it. They're not buying life and disability to use that product. Hopefully they don't have to. Ancillary can be 100% voluntary. We know that the medical carriers, Anthem, Medical Mutual, Aetna, whoever you're working with, they all require that the employer pay at least 50% of the premium on the employee portion. And ancillary commissions are much lower than medical. So those are some of the big differences. So we've established the need that medical is what your clients want. Hang on one second. I had to move something out of the way. It is what your clients want, and they may not see the value in the ancillary and the voluntary benefits. Employee paid coverages have to be sold. We talked about the medical being the driver. You don't need to sell the client on the fact that they need medical insurance. They know they need medical insurance, but they may not know the need for disability. They may not understand the need for life insurance. They may not understand how many of their employees have vision or go to the dentist and need those coverages. So it is a lot tougher to get that done. My screen locked up on me, hang tight. Okay, so as I said at the top, I'm going to go over a very typical scenario in selling voluntary life insurance. I have seen this happen more than once or twice. It's something to stay away from, because you'll see as we go through here and all the work that you put into just doing a voluntary life coverage, that it may not be the best case scenario for you or your client. So let's go through here. And we've all had a 40 life client ask us, hey, can I get some additional life insurance? We only have $15,000 on the group side because the owner and maybe some other people want to buy the insurance. As a broker, your response is, sure, of course we can do that. And we can do that, and I'll have some numbers to you in about a week or so. And what happens then? So we're going to go through the process. You go back to the office, you tell your assistant, hey, ABC company wants voluntary life insurance. Chris, get on that for me and see what we can do to get the quotes out. So that's where the process is starting. So let's go through that process. Chris immediately starts the process and calls the client and asks for a current census. After a few days, the census is received, and Chris goes to market requesting voluntary life from probably 5 or 6 carriers. We all have our stable of carriers that we use for those types of coverages. So out the RFP goes. During the next week or so, Chris probably fields 2 or 3 phone calls from the carriers, emails, asking questions. And after the week is up, Chris is going to have all the quotes back from the carriers, because we know the carriers are never late. And I say that tongue in cheek from the carrier side, because that does happen. So in about a week, Chris hopefully has all the quotes back from the carriers, and then they can start their job in terms of spreadsheeting. So unfortunately, once everything comes back, your assistant normally has to email the carrier or call the carrier with questions. Chris then sits down, spreadsheets, all the 6 options of voluntary life, so you can go out there and present it to the client. You call the client, set a meeting date. Meanwhile, Chris is receiving calls from the carrier reps wanting to know how they look. And I know that because I make those calls. And I know a lot of times they don't appreciate those calls, but that's part of my job, just like part of your job is going out and selling to the client. So you eventually meet with the client and select the carrier based on who looked best and who you as the broker are most comfortable with. Could be past experience, could be a relationship with the rep, could be a highest guarantee issue, could be the lowest rate, could be a number of factors, but you make that decision, hey, we're going to go with best life insurance company. All the quotes require 20 or 25% participation, and at that time you're thinking, well, that's going to be easy to make. No problem, we'll get that 25%. You go back to the office and you let Chris know that BLI is the winner, and we need to start the enrollment process. So what happens? Chris calls the BLI rep with the good news and asks for all the enrollment materials that you need to enroll the group. BLI sends Chris the customized employee forms, the employer forms, and everything that needs to be completed. The BLI rep, in this case, he's a good rep, as I would do, offers to put all the packets together for you. So Chris is lucky, he has all the packets put together, and the BLI rep also asks, hey, do you need me to help with the meeting? And a lot of times you're going to say, no, I can handle it. 40 life, voluntary life, I've done this before. I can get this. You're convinced you can go out and enroll it on yourself, and no problem. Broker goes out and does it on himself. Then you call the client, you get the meeting date to present, and you're on your way to meet with all the employees. You show up at the client site at 8:30 in the morning to enroll the voluntary life arm with the 40 personalized packets and some extra blank copies. Here's where the problems start. Of the 40 people that are eligible for the plan, only 23 decide to enroll the presentation. And I don't need to ask if that's happened to any of us because I know it has. It's happened to everybody. So I know you're a little concerned, but you do the presentation. You ask everyone to return their forms to the HR person within 2 weeks. You leave the rest of the copies with HR or the owner and ask if they could distribute to those not attending. A week goes by and maybe you call Chris or have Chris call the client to see how things are going. They say, good, we're just waiting for a few more forms. After 2 weeks, you get copies of all the enrollment forms that the employees turn back in. So Chris takes those forms, she scans them, puts them in a census format, whatever she has to do or he does to get them over to the insurance company. Chris tells you that 12 of the 40 employees enrolled. At that point, a feeling of a little bit of relief comes over you because, I made the 25%. I got my 10 life minimum. I can issue this group. I didn't waste my time. We're going to move forward with this voluntary life plan, and Chris submits everything needed to BLI for them to issue the case. Unfortunately, now is where another part of the fun really starts because BLI now responds to you and says, hey, Mary's missing a social security number. John didn't put his address down. Chip bought spouse coverage, but he didn't buy employee coverage on himself. And we all know that if you're going to cover your spouse under a voluntary life plan, you have to have your own coverage. And Sarah, who requested over the guarantee issue amount, didn't submit an E&I form. So now Chris has to go back to the client and request all the information. The client responds late, and we're now past the effective date, but let's say the carrier is good and they agree to work with you on this. Chip, who didn't take coverage on himself, is balking to pick up the coverage for himself and sitting on the fence whether to keep the coverage or not. But he decides to keep it. He adds $30,000 for himself, but now his spouse has to be reduced from $50,000 to $15,000. Okay, Chris gets all the missing data to BLI, and everybody's thrilled to move on. BLI issues the policies asserts, and the contract is correct, and a correct bill. So was this a success? You got your sale. You got your 25%. The client got their voluntary life. Everything got issued. Well, here's what it looks like, because Chris goes to enter everything into the agency commission system. So you can track the revenue on this case. And here's how it looks. You got your 12 enrolled. You got an average cert side of $40,000, which is about average on voluntary life. Your total monthly premium for all this work is $140. We know that voluntary life pays a flat 15%. So you have made a grand total of $21 a month or $252 for all your efforts on this. And why is that $21 a month important? not only because it's a low amount, but think about if one of your clients goes out and adds one employee to the medical plan. One employee. Your commission PEPM right there could be 26, 28, 40 with override, depending on the carrier. So you have done all this work, put in all this time and all this effort, and you have paid potentially one half of the commission of your client adding one employee. Does that make sense to anybody? So $252 for all that work I described. Was that worth it? And I'm going to say not a chance, because I've been in that situation. And I know from the broker perspective, having been on that side, that is an awful lot of time and effort for not a lot of income. But let me guess, you make a decent amount of commission on the medical side, your client wanted it, you made your client happy, so you walk away and say, well, I guess it's okay. I mean, it is what it is. We got them their voluntary life. But at the end of the day, you made less than minimum wage. Is anybody on this call happy making minimum wage? I know I'm not. So what was the biggest mistake? What did we say at the very beginning about the difference between medical and other coverages? We said that the difference is voluntary benefits need to be sold. We can't just put them out there and expect the participation to be what we want it to be. We need to educate the employees. We need to sell the enhancement to the benefit package. We need to talk about the one-time opportunity. We need the employer to be actively engaged and mandate people come to those meetings, which we don't generally need to do on the medical side because they're naturally going to be there. So it takes some additional effort, it takes some marketing, it takes some commitment for that to happen. Here's another mistake. Did you really need to go to 6 carriers? Because that's what most brokers do. Every time they get a quote for ancillary benefits, whether it's a voluntary life, whether it's a dental, whether it's a disability, you're going to go to your 5 or 6 favorite carriers. So I asked the question, if the carrier who had the basic life in force has a voluntary life plan in place, why not go to just to that carrier? If they don't have a life in place, aren't there 2 or 3 carriers that you feel comfortable with? Because at the end of the day, it's really not a rate sale on the voluntary benefits. It's really an administration sale. It's really what works best for the client. What's the GI? Because the rates are all going to be pretty close. Here's another big mistake. The broker gave the employees 2 weeks to return their forms. 2 weeks. I can tell you that in a 2-week period of time, most guys are going to grab those forms and they're going to end up in the back seat of their car. When they're leaving work, they're going to throw it in the back seat and they're going to forget about it. Voluntary benefits, employee paid benefits, anything we do requires a call to action. Again, there's a major difference. On the medical side, we don't need to call them to action. They know they need to enroll in the medical plan. But we need to give them less time, because the more time we give them, the more chance they have to forget about it. It drags the process out. They forget what they heard in the meeting, and it's just generally not as effective. Again, these coverages need to be sold. The employees need to understand the value. And what's the first step in any sales process? Pre-qualify. This broker, when he said yes to the voluntary life, he did not pre-qualify this client to find out if they would be an excellent prospect for voluntary life. Now, just based on the fact that they only had a flat $15,000, one could argue, of course, they're a great prospect for voluntary life. But in the end of the day, when you look at all the steps that you had to go through and the $21 a month or the $252 a year you made on this, maybe there were some additional questions you could have asked to find out. Did you determine whether this was a legitimate prospect? Obviously, on this one, the answer was no. You didn't ask why the request was being made. A lot of times the request is being made because the owner has an issue and he wants some additional life on himself, and he really hasn't thought out the process of offering it to all the employees and what the potential impact would be. And you certainly didn't ask if the client was going to mandate a meeting. Did not ask that. So when 23 people showed up at that meeting out of 40, You had a bad feeling at that time, and you had a bad feeling for a good reason, because that's certainly not a good start to the process. So I know for a fact when I do these myself and I have the opportunity, I don't want to do one meeting with 40 people. I want to do 2 meetings with 20 people, or I'll even do 3 meetings with 15 people, because these meetings don't take a long time. And I can tell you that when you get employees in smaller groups, it works better than one large meeting. The other reason why that works is because we all know that every 40-person group has one agitator. One agitator that's going to give you a hard time doing the meeting. One agitator that's going to doubt every single thing that you're saying. So if you break this up into 2 or 3 meetings, you've isolated that person so he only affects a smaller number of people. That's one of the strategies I use that's always been very effective for me. You also didn't ask if the client would endorse and support the enrollment meeting. Did they send out any emails beforehand? Did they make sure everybody was going to be there? Did they talk up the fact that they're improving their benefit package? In this particular case, they did not. And then certainly didn't inquire about doing any other product at the same time, because that's one of my key rules. If you're going to do one, let's do 2, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But what the broker did in this situation, he took that, yes, we'll do the voluntary life. He ran out happy that he had his sale, and he made less than adding 1 person to the medical by doing it this way. So also when you have a pre-qualify, you want to make sure that you have at least 2 meetings with what I said before. You want them to understand that that is critical to the success of the plan. If they are not willing to do anything beforehand, if they are not willing to support it, if they are not willing to make sure people are there, you might want to walk away. Because if you were selling copiers and you knew that the guy in the room that you were making the pitch to wasn't the decision maker, you're wasting your time. This is no different. You also want them to understand the importance of everybody waiving coverage. Everybody has to turn in their form. All 40 people didn't have to turn in their form here, but because when I do these enrollments, even if they're waiving coverage, I want their form back. And I tell the employer this is to protect them as well. So this forces the employee to look at it and take action and maybe take it home and talk to their spouse and make a joint decision on it, because they have a week to do that. And as I said before, we want multiple meetings on the same day. No, we don't want to come back 2 or 3 different days to do this. That's a waste of time. And as I said, you can't wait 2 weeks for the enrollment forms. And most importantly, as I just said, if your clients cannot commit to this, either walk away or be happy with the minimum wage process you're about to embark on, because that's what you're looking at. The worst case scenario is you don't get the participation requirement. Then you have some very unhappy people. So my final rule for doing all this is, if you are going to do one benefit, you can do 2 benefits in the same amount of time as you can do 1 benefit. So you have the chance to double the money that you're going to make, maybe more than double, because maybe you had a disability product or a dental product or a vision product, which might be a lot more popular, and you might get a lot more revenue from this process. It's just as easy to talk to employees about life and disability, or life and vision, or life and dental, or dental or vision. I never do vision without dental, especially if they don't have it. There's no reason not to. As a matter of fact, I just did one a couple weeks ago where the broker asked me for a dental, and I was insistent that we also offer vision. He says, well, I don't think we're going to get the participation. I said, well, let me do the meetings and we'll get the participation. We got 60% participation on the dental, 65% on the vision. More people enrolled for the vision than they did for the dental. And we did them both at the same time. It just makes more sense. So again, perhaps they need a disability plan, STD or LTD, and perhaps they've talked about vision, but they were never able to do it. Now's the time. And if you're going to do 2 benefits like this, take advantage of those smaller meetings. Take advantage of the fact that you can break this 40 life group into 2 different meetings and have 2 different sections of it. It's more personal. People are more apt to ask questions in a smaller environment, and you will sell more product. And again, the more benefits you offer, the more the need for the employees to be at the meeting. Again, it has to be sold. We want to get them to do that meeting. And again, I rarely, if ever, do dental without vision. The only time I would do that is if they said to me, no, we have a vision plan baked into our medical. Some of the carriers will cover glasses, and they just don't feel the need to just cover exams, or I'm sorry, other way around, cover materials only if they have the exams baked in. Okay, Jess, I don't know if we have any questions out there, but if there are, you can shoot them my way. If not, I'll just keep going.
Let me double check here. It doesn't look like we have anything in the chat box or the question box, but everyone is free to ask a question in either of those, and I'll keep double checking it.
Okay. So let me go to the second half of this presentation, and it's not going to, again, we're going to end up with a little bit of time here, but we can, my second portion is about long-term disability. We can all agree that disability is the second most important part of the benefit package. You can live without $1,000 dental benefit. You can live without somebody paying for your eyeglasses. You cannot live without a salary. So LTD is the most important. Unfortunately, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, only 30% of the employees out there have a long-term disability plan. That means 70% do not. And if the group shrinks below 50 lives, about 75% of the employees are not covered by LTD. And this is where, as a broker, you have a ton of opportunity here. So again, most of your clients will not have long-term disability. So I asked the question, why aren't you talking about it? Why are you not willing to sell LTD as an important part of the benefit package? Again, this goes back to the initial premise that these benefits are a little tougher to sell. You do have to discuss why they're important, why the employees need them. And again, dental benefits pay a small amount. Your long-term disability plan can pay somebody up to $100,000 a year, maybe more, when they need it the most. And again, I threw the stat out there earlier, almost 50% of foreclosures are due to disability, and it does need to be sold as people are not buying it to use it. Revenue per employee is a metric I used to use on the broker side. When you look at how much you make from the medical, from the life, STD, LTD, vision, dental, whatever it is, helps increase that metric of revenue per employee. So I know a lot of agencies focus on. Okay, so here's my question. How many of you sold an 8% increase on the medical plan? And I'm going to assume all of you have, because we know how all these renewals go. Even if you got a large increase from another carrier, you ended up selling an 8% increase, which looked a lot better than that 19. So you've done that. So if the average medical premium is $800 a month, that means the increase on that premium was $64 a month. Let's assume that the employer paid half of that. So he agreed to pay $32 extra on that particular plan per person per month. But at the same time, let's say an average LTD rate is 35 cents per 100. Average salary is $40,000 on a 30 life group, which means your payroll is $100,000. If you put an LTD plan in this group, it's $350 a month. When I talk to most brokers, they say, well, my client doesn't want to pay for LTD. Well, that's an expense he doesn't want. The reality is, when he picked up that $32 per person per month, he's already paying an extra $960 on the medical. Again, this is because they perceive they need the medical, they have to have it. But the difference in cost between LTD and medical is striking. And timing is everything. So am I suggesting that people go out and sell LTD while they're trying to sell a medical increase? Not at all. That's not the easiest thing to do. But you meet with your client several times a year. Sometimes quarterly, maybe less, maybe more. Smaller client, you probably meet with them twice a year. But this is a perfect product to talk about off cycle from the medical. Because when you're in the middle of that medical renewal, I know this, that's where 99% of the focus is, and it's tough to get their attention on other products. LTD is better sold off cycle. But I am suggesting, if you can sell a $960 increase to the employer, because the employees picked up the rest of it, for medical, you can certainly sell an LTD policy worth $350. It's certainly doable. We just have to ask about it and talk about it. And for example, why not approach all your 1/1 renewals that you just got through with? Why not approach them sometime in April or May, now that the dust has settled? Why not have a factual discussion with them about how many people actually go out on disability, how many people use long-term disability, foreclosures, the amount that this benefit pays compared to the cost. There's all these different things that you can bring up. The other thing you can do with ancillary is you can make an employee paid. The employer doesn't even have to pay for it. And on long-term disability, that's not a bad thing because the taxability of the benefit is non-existent when the employee pays for it versus when the employer pays for it. So it's not a benefit, not a bad benefit to do on a voluntary basis. And here's another strategy that I use. If you want to add, along with the medical renewal, let's say the increase is 2% and tolerable. What if the employer puts the entire increase on the employees? Let's say the medical rates go up by 2%. Employer doesn't want to pick it up. So he increases the employee contributions to cover that increase. Well, how great a messaging would it be is, even though you're having that small increase, I'm putting in a long-term disability plan that you don't have to pay for. It makes that small increase a lot easier to digest. It's perfect timing. The other thing that you're doing, you're obviously increasing your revenue. So what if you shop the health insurance and you were able to get a decrease? That happens. I know Anthem has put out a ton of decreases lately on either the grandmother block, and certainly the new renewals are coming out soon. We're hopeful that those will look good. Maybe there's some decreases. Maybe you can negotiate some. But now it's time for a new strategy. Perhaps the employees maintain their medical deductions as they are. They don't pay any less, even though the rates went down. But you had an employer-paid LTD plan. You have kept the employer's spend fairly close, with one exception. You've increased your commission, now making more revenue per employee. So you took that 2% decrease, 3% decrease, whatever they ended up getting on their renewal. Maybe it's flat and they're okay with that. But you took that 2% decrease and you held their spend the same. You gave them an outstanding benefit and you made more money in the process. That's never a bad thing. So if medical commissions decrease due to a change in carrier, you've potentially covered the shortfall. We know not all medical carriers pay the same commissions. So let's say you move them from a carrier that was paying a higher commission to a carrier that was paying a lower commission. Now, as a small business owner, you're looking at that revenue and going, well, that's going to hurt a little bit. Well, if you put an LTD plan in there, all of a sudden you're replacing dollars at a 15% commission. So it's a good strategy overall when you get a rate decrease to add in additional coverage. And it doesn't have to be long-term disability. I'm just using that as an example today because that's our least used coverage across the ancillary spectrum. It could be vision. It could be dental. It could be anything like that. But when they're getting a rate decrease on their medical, perfect time to add additional coverages. So I'm challenging everybody on the webinar to think of 3 to 5 groups that you may have just renewed in January that do not have LTD. Go through your head, go through your block, think of the 3 to 5 groups that you might have in your block that do not have long-term disability. In fact, I challenge each of you to also look at the dental and vision, voluntary life, etc., where all your clients have gaps in coverage. Your best client is your current client. We all know this, but we tend to forget about it. So what I did on the broker side was I took our 120 groups, sorted them by size, then sorted them by which coverage they had. And then under LTD, if they did not have LTD, I put a green box there because I knew that was opportunity. And we targeted those groups for additional coverages. We targeted certain groups for vision, for dental, and they were an important part of the discussions. And we went out and we met with clients to try to upsell and try and round out their benefit package. Because let's be honest, the more benefits that we have in a client, the more likely the client will be loyal to us because they trust us, they know we're doing a good job for them, and it helps protect you against an AOR because the last thing you want is you don't want another broker coming in there and saying, well, why don't you have long-term disability? Why don't you have vision? Most of your employees want vision and your broker hasn't talked to you about vision. You don't want to leave yourself susceptible to that. So that's another reason why to do it at the opportune moment. And now we're approaching the perfect time. 1/1 is becoming a memory, not a distant memory as I put down there, but it is becoming a memory, and it is a perfect time to do that. So In summary, voluntary and ancillary sales do take sales skills that medical does not. Not all sales are good sales. We went through that process, which showed you it may not be worth your time. Have to pre-qualify. Can't stress that enough. Pre-qualify, make sure the client is committed to doing it the right way. If you're not sure what the right way is to do it, find a carrier partner, talk to me, we'll do it the right way. We'll get you the participation that you need on that. Maximize revenue by doing 2 products at a time. Sell ancillaries off cycle from the medical renewal, especially if there's a big increase. Because if you're looking at a big increase on the medical, I don't think I would ever approach them on the dental at that time. Educate your clients about the need for disability and find the right carriers to partner with. Again, you don't need 6 carriers to go to market for some of these benefits. I know at Anthem, small group, we have the best dental product out there in the marketplace. I'm going to throw in one plug for us here. We have the best dental product. We have the biggest vision network. And I have a lot of brokers in Northern Ohio, and I know Stephanie does in Southern Ohio, that relies solely on her or me to do these things for, because we do a pretty good job with them. And with that, if we have any questions, I'll take it. If not, you're going to have some additional time back today.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. That was a great presentation. Lots of good information. Well done. I still don't see any questions, so I'll just move forward and put close to this. If you do have any questions, you can always email me if you've taken down my information, and I'll make sure I get with Dan, and we can get back to you with your answers to your questions. But I think that's it for today. I want to thank all of you, our brokers, our partners that attended today. I really appreciate it. We'll be back in 2 weeks on March 20th when I will host United Healthcare's Ed Lightcap as our special guest. So that's all for now. Thanks again, and have a good day.